many teenagers don't think they have stories to tell. And the reality, the truth is that they all do. They just need people to listen to them, I guess. And I feel like kindness is very, very underrated, you know. Yeah, I think there's an intelligence that comes with kindness.
Have you ever wondered how writing can support your well-being? Join us on Grafto, the Power of Writing podcast, where we explore the transformative power of words. I'm your host, Alina Maragelis, and together with our amazing guests, we'll delve into the world of writing and its incredible benefits. I'm joined by Nathaneal Lessore, and Nathanael is an award-winning writer of children's and teenagers' books, including titles like King of Nothing, Steady for Days, and Solving Crimes is Not My Superpower. And his stories tackle themes like toxic masculinity and peer pressure. And I'm keen to find out more about it. Nathanael, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And perhaps let's start. Tell us a bit about your story. How did you get into writing?
It happened by accident. So I went to university quite late. So I was in my mid-20s, and I did a creative writing degree just because I was bored at work one day and I thought it was fun to write silly little things to entertain myself. And so I went to university to do creative writing. And I didn't think I was ever going to be a writer, so I used my degree to get into marketing. And then with marketing, I just went into office jobs after uni. And so for a few years, I was just writing articles about plug sockets and software. And then when COVID happened, I got bored again because I was just living quite isolated, and so I thought, let me see if I can still write. And I wrote what became the manuscript for my first book, Steady for This, and I was just going to upload it and leave it alone. But then I thought, what if maybe it is good enough for an agent? And so I sent it out to 5 or 6 different agents, and I got a couple rejections, and a couple people ignored me, and then one agent said yes, and the book went to auction, I think, about a year later. No, a bit earlier than that. The book was published a year later, and I didn't have to do marketing anymore. And so it was wonderful. Yeah, so I just spend all my time writing books and doing more frequently now, doing lots of author events. But I did spend a whole year basically on the sofa just typing away.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love your story. Perhaps it's not a classical one because you're not someone who, thought, I will always be a writer. So it happened for you in a way by surprise, and here you are.
No, exactly.
That's amazing, Nathanael. And how do you think the process of creative writing can serve perhaps as a tool for self-discovering and, understanding your own emotions? How is that helping you?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I found quite relevant is write what you know. And I always tell students on my school visits that I am not very good at maths, and so I probably shouldn't write about a maths genius, because that would take a lot of research and a lot of convincing. But write what you know, I think the kind of thinking behind it is that everyone has stories happening to them and around them all the time, and so lots of my novels, like all of them really, are things that are based on real life. And so in that way, and they are fun, silly fiction, but they're also like grounded in reality and reality of things that have happened to me and reality of things that have happened to people around me. And so I always say, even something as simple as what did you have for breakfast this morning? Like there's a whole story there. And so, I do think because stories are always happening, while the world is still spinning, I think there's stories to be told, and I did have one student recently And when I said to her we were doing a creative writing workshop, and this was a bit of a rough school, and she didn't want to do it, and she had her head in her desk, just saying, "Oh, I don't have anything to write about." And I said to her, like, "Oh, okay, like, who's your favorite teacher? You can write about that." And she said, "Yeah, I don't have a favorite teacher." And I said, "Okay, who's your least favorite teacher?" And she stopped and she said, "My music teacher. He doesn't like me. He's always picking on me." And so I said, "Oh, you can just write about your music teacher who you don't like." And she said, "Oh, am I allowed?" And I said, like, "Well, yeah, of course, write about this music teacher." And it was good. It got very violent. The story was the music teacher was sitting at his desk and he leaned back and he spilled coffee all over himself and he was all burnt and he had to go to hospital. And in the ambulance, he was singing songs. And she read it in front of the whole class. And the whole class gave her a huge round of applause. And she came up to me at the end and she was like, "Oh, that was so cool." And she got all of that confidence just, and she didn't have it an hour earlier. And it's funny because I feel like maybe the same applies to me in a way, in that I probably never wrote or ever read until I went to uni. I didn't really read, and it's because I didn't think there were stories about me or stories that spoke to me. And maybe I didn't think I had stories to tell, but obviously everyone does every single day, you know. And so, no, it's quite good to see that, I guess, that therapeutic side of writing that you're talking about. It happens after writing. I think it starts with, I have a story to tell, and this poor kid at school, she didn't think she had a story to tell. And I think from going up and down the country, I've done probably like 100 school visits now, and so many teenagers don't think they have stories to tell. And the reality, the truth is that they all do. They just need people to listen to them, I guess.
Yes. And what would you say happens for you when you write? How do you think it's useful to write about our emotions, or write even, in the form of characters and in stories?
My whole job, I guess, is writing fun, silly conversations and scenarios. And so I just love my job because I get paid to have fun. It's a bit like going to the pub and playing pool or something, and I really am like, oh wait, this is my job. Like I get paid to entertain myself, and so yeah, so I love it for that reason, just because it's so fun. And for me, like, yeah, for me this job is I love it, but it's all about, yeah, like having fun. But I guess I'm at a point now as well where if I'm not writing, then I feel like I'm missing out. So I can be, like, yeah, I could be at my parents' house and I'm thinking like, oh, I need to go home and write, or I could be out and about. I could be sitting in the park at a picnic and thinking like, I can't wait to get home and carry on writing, and part of that is, I guess, deadlines. But the other part of it is like, I love, this job so much.
Oh, that's nice. You love the process. And of course, emotions, they can be happy emotions as well, right?
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the laughing, that the fun you have writing, that is very beautiful, because those are emotions that you're expressing in a way through writing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's true. Yeah.
And in your books, you tackle some themes, yeah, on masculine toxicity. Tell us a bit about that. Was it a conscious decision to address these tough topics in a way, perhaps, that resonates positively with teenagers, or
Yeah.
what kind of happened for you?
It just kind of goes back to write what you know. And at the time, that was my second book. That was King of Nothing. I had a friend who was teaching in a school, and they were going to do an assembly about an online horrible YouTuber
Mm.
who is really, really, really awful, and the school didn't talk about it because they didn't want to send like their students over to that online
Course, to
platform.
create, yes, even more publicity.
Exactly, you tell a teenager not to do something, the chances are they're immediately going to go and do it.
To do it, yeah.
And so that book, I thought like, oh well, surely there has to be a different way to get, you know, a conversation happening in schools, you know, because I don't really want to tell kids, you know, how to live their lives or give any, you know, moral advice.
Of course.
But I did think like, you know, there needs to be a conversation. And this was, I wrote it a couple years ago. And I also had my nephew who was really young, who was in primary school, who was coming up to me and saying like, oh, like, have you heard of this YouTuber? And I thought like, this is so young to be indoctrinated into like quite a nasty ideology, you know, and so I did, you know, a bit of research and listened to the guy, you know, for writing the book, and I was horrified, you know, and I was thinking like, children are listening to this, like this is so wild. Why the government not doing anything about this? At the time, it was before like it hit the newspapers, you know, and I knew so many women didn't even know this person's name, you know, and I was thinking that he's waging a war against like modern women, and most of them, you know, don't really know about this guy. And there are several YouTubers who spit the same kind of horrible stuff. It kind of came from that. It was, I'd had in my family, young children listening to this horrible stuff, students up and down the country listening to the horrible stuff, who still probably listen to it, you know, and there's a divide happening in schools. And it's funny, I was actually talking to a school librarian yesterday about this, and she said, oh, it happens in my school as well.
Oh, wow.
Where I'll do an author talk and all the boys on one side and all the girls on the other, you know, and it's split right down the middle. You know, and the first time it happened, I said to a teacher, is this normal? Do they have to split boys and girls? And she said, no, that's just where they choose to sit. And honestly, it's been 5 or 6 different schools now where the girls are so scared of the boys that they're all on the opposite side of the hall.
Wow.
I think it is like fear because there's so much horrible stuff online that these boys are consuming, and the language that they use is also really nasty and horrible. And so, you know, the tackle on toxic masculinity is like, it is an important one. You know, I live in Streatham in South London, and in Croydon, was it like a year ago, there was a poor girl who was stabbed by someone who, you know, a boy in year 9, so he would have been what, like 13, 14, and it's because someone broke up with him that he came up with a knife to go stab his. I think that, like, he's obviously not the only kid who has consumed all of this content online. Yeah, so I just thought like, let's at least have the conversation. And then there was a TV show came out recently called Adolescence.
Yes.
And that put a spotlight on the conversation. And so I thought like, oh, okay, we're finally talking about this. But it's been going on for years and years and years, you know. This is only now, you know, but I think it's a bit late now because so many teenage boys who were really young have grown up listening to this kind of stuff. Yeah.
And is your upcoming novel, the What Happens Online, which by the way sounds incredible, is it related to that? Can you tell us a bit about it without obviously sharing too much before it?
Yeah, that novel, that's more, I mean, again, the whole write what you know, from so many school visits that I've done, the teenagers are always quoting video games and videos and stuff that they've seen. Sir, have you heard this song? And have you played this game? And so, you know, I thought like they're always playing some video game. And so I thought like, oh, okay, like it's interesting, the relationship between being online and being offline, especially for a teenager, where it's linked to all this mental health crises, but also, you know, again, I didn't want to say like to teenagers, hey, don't go online because, you know, that's impossible.
Yeah.
But again, it's about having a conversation between what do you believe when you go online. And so this character, he is really popular at playing video games, but not very popular at school. And he creates a social media. He starts spreading lies about his bullies, and he takes his bullies down. But really silly ones, like one of them lives under a bridge and one of them got a BBL or, you know, really, really silly stuff. But then he starts lying about himself and says that he's good at football and he's a chess genius. And then obviously those lies come back to bite him. And he meets a girl in the library who is quite analog. And so it's their discussions, because there are, lots of corners of the online community
Of course.
that are really, friendly, especially, and so my way in for a teenage audience was video games, because the video game community are generally quite helpful with one another.
Yes.
And quite supportive. And so, I wanted to say, like, there are two different sides, of the conversation, I guess.
Of course, and it's about character development, right? So
Yeah.
it's okay. So this happens in a way so that people will learn from this experience and grow as a result of reading. In what's going to happen. I'm keen to. When is the book coming out?
That one, it's just come out. Came out a couple weeks ago. It's doing weirdly well. If I'm being honest, Waterstone's children's book prize kind of changed everything, and suddenly made me very busy. But it also came with lots of, I guess, that added publicity for what happens online. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, I'm weirdly busy and grateful.
And on that, what would you say are kind of challenges or opportunities that you see for teenagers' well-being in the digital space, and how perhaps writing helps us address that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, again, it's huge, because librarians and school teachers and arguably probably parents are having to fight against phones instead of books, and it's tale as old as time, but it's mainly teenage boys who stop reading immediately. And teenage girls tend to read more. And the thing that you get from books that you don't get from phones in the same way is the curiosity to travel, empathy. You learn so much empathy from books, general creativity and problem solving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the thing with books, and like you said about the character growth, is that they give hope, and you might not get the same level of hope from a 30-second TikTok video, and you might not learn, about character change and character growth from a 30-second TikTok video, and the same with empathy and kindness, and also kind of just learning about the world in general. And I guess that there is more value as well. And again, I tell students, like, it's a fact that teenagers who read more tend to earn higher paid jobs as adults.
Yeah.
And they tend to see more of the world. And, all of that's just statistics, regardless of race and gender and economic background. It's just, when you're a teenager, if you read more, you will earn more money, and you also more of the world. Teenagers who read more travel more as adults, and I guess that comes from the exposure to different cultures and fantastical worlds that you get in books, and you grow up with that sense of curiosity. But the educational side of reading more, is one that benefits them all throughout life. I've seen it so many times. Kids who are not in the best position in their lives, but when they find solace in a book or in a library, everything changes, I guess.
Yeah.
And even the presence of a school library, and it's horrible because I feel like librarians don't get the credit they deserve. Librarians and booksellers, I guess. The act of literally putting a book in a kid's hand and saying that you are going to enjoy this, like this is one for you, it is something that is getting lost to things like, smartphones and that. And so like their entire lives improve when they're reading more, but also very specifically, down to the little finite details, like everything gets better. I think there's currently not a whole lot of hope that teenagers have for themselves, and books completely change that, you know.
That's amazing. And if you could give, let's say, one piece of advice to a teenager struggling to find their voice or express themselves, what would it be, Nathaniel?
Um, it'd probably be kind, and then everything else kind of follows on a bit, like, you know, kind of falls into place. That's why among all my books, like the main thread is kindness. Among my middle grade books, you know, the Not My Superpower series, and all the teen books, are those self-belief and be kind. And I think self-belief is a harder journey, but be kind is something that you can do immediately in a day-to-day, you know, and when you're kind, most of the time, or a lot of the time, people are kind back, and it opens doors, and it makes you, you know, more approachable to your peers. And I feel like kindness is very, very underrated, you know. Yeah, I think there's an intelligence that comes with kindness, and so kind of practice that. You know, I think there is a bit of ignorance and stupidity in being mean and spiteful, but kindness comes with a kind of moral and kind of general in intelligence. And so it would be that, it would be kind. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but be kind to each other, and you know, and things will fall into place.
Mm. And how does the power of writing, help you personally? How would you say it helps you with your own well-being or maybe life?
I get to see so much of the country, like all the loveliest parts, and also the I guess more challenging parts. I'm so grateful for that, and so yeah, I get to travel a lot. The writing itself, like you said, because I enjoy it,
Mm.
I just can sit down and write obsessively, and you know, like get a laugh out of myself, kind of thing.
Mm.
And so yeah, I guess in terms of like my own mental health, it's probably good, just because
Yeah.
yeah, I just get to sit around laughing all day.
Yeah.
Was one book that I wrote, a teen book, where my grandmother had passed away just before I started writing it.
Right.
And so I was able, like, just kind of naturally, she's the first person that I ever was close to, that I lost.
Yeah.
And so I was on Google, like, how do I deal with grief and loss, and you know,
Yes.
and it was saying, you know, take a walk, and you know, like all that kind of, remember it's okay to be sad, and like, you know, they had lots of like quite helpful scientific answers.
Yes.
And then when I got to my writing, I wrote her into the book, and it was so like, yeah, even now it's kind of emotional.
That's okay.
Like, yeah, and I just uh, like, she's kind of immortal now, I guess.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, it's almost like I get to see her in the pages, you know. And the grief in the book is it's just, you know, straight out of an honest place. And
Nice.
so yeah, I guess there's like, that's another benefit of writing, that's not, you know,
Mm.
so super happy, but still incredibly helpful, you know. Yeah.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that. And how do you normally develop your characters? Where do you get this inspiration?
I know all of them. Like, they're all people I know. Like, you know, I have a large family, so I've got three brothers and four sisters.
Hmm.
I've got, you know, 100 aunts and uncles and a million cousins.
Yes.
I've got friends who I see quite regularly.
Hmm.
And so all of the characters are people I grew up with, or people I'm surrounded by, you know, to the point where I'm so lazy with names. so all of my characters' names are just names of my family members and cousins. You know, I did have one cousin come up to me and he said, "Oh, why did you like name this terrible character after me?" And I said, like, you know, it's just unlucky.
No,
You know, like I'm bad with names. I wasn't basing this terrible character on you, but like, yeah, I needed a name. Sorry. And so yeah, it's like all of it is from real life. Like, you know, I'm not creative enough to invent amazing characters. You know, I just met them and grew up with them and spent time with them, and yeah, so they're all real people, or mishmashes of real people, I guess.
That's very, honest and beautiful in a way that people in your life, they get to be in books in a way, even if sometimes their personality doesn't match the
Yeah,
perhaps
yeah.
characters that you're creating. And in relation to the topics, how do you choose the titles? By the way, the titles are, I find them amazing, and also the stories. So how do you come up with those?
I have surprisingly little choice. You know, I've never come up with a title, I don't think. Um, Steady for this. I mean, it always happens every time I publish a book. They'll say to me like, "Oh, give us some title ideas," and I send them 20 ideas, and then they come back to me and say like, "Those are all rubbish. What do you think of this?" You know, and that happened with Steady for this. It happened with King of Nothing. Solving crimes is not my superpower. I'm pretty sure my editor for that came up with it. I maybe had a hand in what happens online, but most of the time it's always like I give ideas and then they say like, "These are terrible. What do you think of this?" So yeah, I don't really have much yeah, much say in the titles.
Saying that, okay.
Um, and then yeah, or like I don't know, like that's the thing is I am in charge almost of what's in between the pages, and then the everything else, like the you know, the publishers, they have teams of everyone to do everything. And so yeah, all I really have to worry about is the writing stuff. And then in terms of the actual stories that I want to tell, again, I you know, they'll ask me for 3 or 4 different ideas, and I'll send them all those ideas, and then they come back to me and say like, "We like this one, like write this one." And even if it's not my favorite, you know, they know the market, they know the industry, and
Right.
they'll say, you know, it's trending in this way, and so you need to write that story. And so yeah, so I'll send out ideas, and then they just tell me like, yeah, that's a good one.
And how would you say, Nathaniel, your characters or your stories help teenagers?
Um, I think being able to see themselves in the books, you
Mm,
know, because like I said, 100 school visits, barely any of them, especially, you know, if you're, you know, in areas where there's less funding and less self-belief in the teenagers and their schools. I think being able to relate to books is one of the most important things that you know that we could ever do as writers, I guess, and librarians and even people like yourself, you know, who give, you know, literacy a platform,
mm,
especially for teenagers, for them to be able to read a book and relate is important because you know, I think teenagers who don't see themselves in books don't read, you know, and that's horrible for for them, but for the country, you know. And so being able to relate, I think some teenagers, because there's some slang in some of my books, and the teenagers be like, "Oh, the librarians more," you know, they'll be like, "Oh, our teenagers sound exactly like this." You know, and teenagers will like ask me questions, and you know, and they're like, "Oh, sir, like, did this actually like happen?" And like, "Oh, you know, that I grew up in a state like this," and so that relatability is so important because, you know, I don't know personally many teenagers who will read, you know, a 10,000 page fantasy, and there is a market for that. But if we only wrote those kind of, fantasies this big, then suddenly you've just excommunicated, I guess, like a huge portion of teenagers who should be reading and who will only do that if they're able to relate.
Yeah. And especially because your stories have a good ending, right? A good character and a beautiful character development, in the sense that even if there perhaps the bad things happen in the books, then they somehow there is a journey, right, of your characters. And how do you think that is helping teenagers?
I think they're able to, like, there is a character who starts off who's not super nice,
Okay.
and he goes on quite an epic character change. And he's kind of, it's almost like a Laurel and Hardy, where he's pitted against a teenager who's doe-eyed and very hopeful and optimistic, and there's lots of side-eye and clashes between them, I guess. And what I love is that I have lots of teenagers coming up to me saying that, oh, we really relate, with the soft teenager, but then I have so many say that, oh, we really relate with the hard teenager. And so I think especially teenage boys, when they're able to relate early on, when
Yeah.
maybe he hasn't learned as much, and as he goes on a journey, he takes a reader on a journey. And so I think this is weirdly quite impactful that teenagers relate at the beginning and not just at the end. So if you're relating to someone at the
Yes.
beginning, and you're able to follow and also like his journey,
Yes.
then you're going on it with them.
Mm. And as a result, probably they learn, right? And then they grow by just reading about these characters. I can relate to this person, but
Yeah,
then seeing their journey and how they've grown, they can see perhaps the same trajectory for them as well, right? So
yeah, no, exactly.
yeah, that's very beautiful, very inspirational, Nathaniel. Well, it was a joy and pleasure to have
Yeah,
you.
no, thank you.
And thank you for sharing with us a bit about your world. And keep on writing to teenagers, because I think I don't know how much they are as a target for writers, and they are of course a very important part of the future of the world. And
Yeah, and they're underserved as well. There's lots of books, but there's not many books for all teenagers. There's lots of books for a specific type of teenager. I think verse novels for teenagers are becoming a bit more popular. So there's books like Crossing the Line by Tia Fisher and Wild East by Ashley Hickson Lawrence. And so there are ways to that.
yeah.
Yeah, so that I'm quite grateful that there are more and more teen writers. I think getting a spotlight, like you said, because it is so important for the future. Yeah,
Yes. And also the fact that it kind of opens the world for them in different ways as well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
reading, as you were saying, I think it's an amazing activity to have, and I hope new generations are not losing that.
yeah,
'Cause, yeah, we grew up a lot with books,
yeah,
and I remember I would lose myself in books, yeah, as a kid. Well, Nathaniel, thank you so much
yeah.
for
No, thank
our
you.
talk today. It's been a pleasure, and good luck with everything that you're doing, and to many more books towards teenagers.
It's the goal in it. But yeah, no, thank you for having me on the talk.
Wonderful, thank you.